Welcome to Exponentially Elevate Your Leadership Impact, the podcast for individuals who are ready to lead boldly, live authentically, and multiply their influence. I'm Dr. Stephanie Dugan, speaker, mentor, and 30-year educator, leadership expert, best-selling author, and chief strategic officer of a growing small business in Mississippi. My passion for leadership started early, influenced deeply by the strength, grace, and unwavering work ethic of my mother. She showed me what it means to lead by example with purpose, resilience, and heart. And that legacy fuels everything I do. I've spent my career empowering women in education and leadership, and I created this space for individuals just like you, purpose-driven, passionate, and ready for more. Each month, we'll welcome incredible guests to explore mindset shifts, leadership strategies, and transformational stories, all grounded in my signature leadership dance framework to help you lead with clarity, confidence, and unstoppable impact. Let's get started and exponentially elevate your leadership journey. Today, we have an international speaker, award-winning author, and confidence coach, Simone Knego. She is dedicated to empowering women to overcome self-doubt and live purpose-driven lives. As the best-selling author of The Extraordinary Unordinary You, Simone extends her mission through her globally ranked podcast, Her Unshakable Confidence, offering inspiration and insights to a worldwide audience. Her transformative work, including the REAL method, provides a straightforward framework for cultivating genuine self-assurance, maybe with some genius in there too. Featured on major networks like ABC, NBC, and CBS, and in publications such as Entrepreneur and Yahoo News, Simone also champions her kitchen table leadership philosophy, which emphasizes that true leadership is performed through everyday choices. She is the heart of a vibrant household with her husband of 32 years, 6 children, and 3 dogs. Her upcoming book, Real Confidence, A Simple Guide to Go from Unsure to Unshakable, launches in February, offering women practical tools to foster authentic confidence. Well, welcome, Simone. I'm so glad to have you here.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Oh my goodness. Let's just start from your kitchen table leadership philosophy. Kind of share what that means to you and how did you come about that?
So, for a long time, I really thought that the idea of a leader was the person in the boardroom, right? The CEO, the what happens in the corner office. And what I've realized over time, so many leadership decisions, they're the things we do every day, the things that happen around the kitchen table. But nobody's ever called it that. So we don't consider it leadership. But the things that we do every day, the behind the scenes, the messy moments, those are all leadership. It's not, you don't have to wait for a title to lead. You lead from exactly where you are. And so the idea of kitchen table leadership came about for me because as a mom of 6, so many things happened around the kitchen table, good, bad, crazy, whatever. But
Absolutely.
thinking about just the big decisions we made, a lot of times it happened around the kitchen table. And I would say that's probably true of every person I know. So many things happen around the kitchen table. So really, it's the symbol of the kitchen table, but the idea is that we are all leaders and we need to understand that the choices we make every day, those are leadership decisions.
Absolutely. And you even said you made a comment that leadership is not about a position. And that's something that I've talked about just about every day. It's not about a position or a title. It's about how you interact and influence others that are around
Mhm.
you. And so I love the idea of the kitchen table. And so you have a large family. I know you traveled the world. I know that you have done some incredible things. Is there anything you want to share as we jump into our leadership conversation, just to let our audience know a little bit more about you?
Sure. So I started off my work life as a CPA. I have a bachelor's and master's in accounting and realized pretty quickly that that wasn't my purpose. Didn't know what my purpose was, but that wasn't my purpose. So I changed my mind several times. And really, through volunteer work, I figured out really what I was passionate about was speaking and writing and helping women see themselves differently. And so that's where I am now. Yes, I have 6 kids. We adopted our youngest 3, so we are a multicultural family. And I couldn't imagine my life any other way. But for many years, I did not consider myself a leader because I went to the formal definition of what leadership means. And I just feel that we need to tell the world that that's not how it works.
Absolutely. And so, what sparked your passion for leadership to talk about the kitchen table leadership and to share that with everybody? And how has that evolved over time for you?
So I would say one of the things that kind of made me see things differently was I actually climbed Mount Kilimanjaro in 2015. It
Mhm.
was not a bucket list item. It was presented to me and I said yes. Maybe because I used to be the yes girl, right? I had no boundaries. I said yes to everything because I didn't want to disappoint anybody, if that sounds familiar to you. So I said yes. And one of the most interesting things about that experience was the thought of leadership. So it's one thing when you're talking about leadership at work, right? How that
Mhm.
works. But it's another thing, leadership on a mountain.
Yeah.
So when something goes wrong, what do we do? Or if someone can't carry their full pack, do we split it up? Or if someone doesn't think they're going to make it to the top, do we all stay behind? So for me, that really sparked this idea of wait, it's the decisions that we're making every day that are leadership decisions. And that all goes back to the kitchen table.
I love how genuine this sounds because it truly is genuine. Leadership typically is about policies and procedures and institutional guidelines and whatnot. But I've always said we tend to forget about the people
Mm.
in all of that. And so I think that's what you're bringing to the forefront is it's about the people, it's about the relationships, it's about your daily interactions. It's not just about your meeting, it's not just about the agenda, and it's not just about, checking off a box that you did something you were supposed to do. It's really building those relationships is what it comes down to.
Yeah. I mean, that's such a huge part, the connections we make, the relationships we have, and how we treat people. So when I have a couple of different speeches I do, but the one that I'm doing this week is about the idea of kitchen table leadership and really redefining leadership from the kitchen table to the boardroom. One
Mhm.
of the stories I tell is about Colleen Barrett, who started off as the legal secretary for Herb Kelleher, who was the CEO of Southwest Airlines. And she started off as a legal secretary. She became the first president of a US based airline, first woman president. And she did that by the actions that she took, not by the position that she had. She led with care, she led with heart, she became the backbone for that organization. And I think that's so important for everybody to hear because we don't need to have the title to be able to make a difference, to be able to be promoted to the top. It has nothing to do with that. It has to do with the actions that you take every day, the influence you have, not the position you have.
Well, and you and I believe this, right? We
Mm,
believe that it's the actions you take and the connections you make, but there are so many rigid guidelines that are out there. I once applied for a position and I was told that, I was the best candidate they had, but because I hadn't held this specific title before, that I wasn't even considered
mm.
to go up. Although they flat out said, you're the best candidate we had, but because you haven't had this one position, we can't offer that position to you. And I said, you know what? Then I guess I don't need to be a part of this company anymore. If I'm
Yeah.
not valued for what I bring, then I'm not being valued for everything that I have contributed and my life's work that I'm putting into that location. So I decided to step away, and that was a big choice, but I realized that I wasn't being valued for who I was or what I brought to the table.
And I think that
So,
there are plenty of organizations that are like that. Like you have to check
mhm,
the boxes to be able to be promoted to the next part. And maybe that's not for you. I can tell you
right.
that's not for me. I mean, I had that a couple years ago where I applied for a position and I thought, yeah, I know that I am the right person for this position. And the response was, well, you're missing this. Right. And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, well, and then the person they hired lasted like 9 months. So I'm like, okay, good,
Well,
good. Good for you.
it,
Like whatever. I mean, I
that's right.
understand how it works, but that just means that it's not for you right now.
And I'm so glad that you brought that up because I had another position several years ago that I applied for, and I didn't get that one either. But it turned out that one of the other applicants was closely not related, but had worked together with the previous supervisor. And so they were trying to get a specific person in. But what do you say to that person who has gone through all of this? They've applied for things, they know that they're highly qualified, and the answer is no. and then their confidence just gets plummeted. What would you say to that person? How would you help them stand up again and move forward and keep trying?
Yeah, I think it's the continuous you can't control certain things, you can control how you respond to them.
Mhm.
I have a little mindset hack that I like to use for especially when it comes to confidence. Control Alt Delete, which of course back in the day that was how we would reset our computer, but I believe that our minds freeze too, right? So the idea that we need to do a reset sometimes. And I would say pretty much every day because we all have that voice inside our head that tells us that we're not good enough and that, oh my gosh, stop trying. You've applied to all these things. You don't deserve this. And it's so not true. So, control is the awareness, the idea that you're going to have these negative thoughts that come into your head, but you get to choose what stays and what goes, right? You get to choose how you respond to these negative thoughts. So, is it helping you? Is it moving you forward? Most likely, the answer is no. Okay. Second part is which is alternative. Tell yourself a better story. So when it comes to applying for a job and you don't get it, like it's just not the right thing for me, right? It doesn't matter what they are thinking about me. It's not the right thing for me. And so instead of, I can't, how about I can? Or what if I fail? How about when I succeed? So tell yourself a
Mhm.
better story. And the last part is control. I mean, is delete. Delete the habits and beliefs that don't serve you. Delete the comparison game. Delete the idea that you're not good enough. There will be the right position for you. I mean, I think right now we're in a really hard time because there are so many jobs that have been lost. And people, I had a friend telling me the other day that her daughter just lost her job and she's had nothing but perfect performance reviews, right?
Mhm.
So again, it's not about you. It is about the situation at the time. And that doesn't mean to stop. And I know it's frustrating, but you have to keep going because there is going to be something out there that matches what you need.
So you mentioned Control Alt Delete, and that is such a great reset tool. And again, Control Alt Delete still works, by the way. So
It brings up like a screen instead
it
of
does.
just, yeah, it's like I forget
It
what it's
does.
called, but it brings up
It's
some
like the
special
task
screen.
manager
The
or
task
something.
manager. Yes.
Yep,
Yes.
yep.
The task
But
manager. Yeah.
but the alt piece is, looking at that better story, shifting from that negative self-talk to that positive self-talk. And I think that that is so important, especially as women, because we tend to pacify ourselves. We don't tend to support ourselves in, being successful. And so there's an activity that I've always encouraged folks to do is, own your greatness. So, writing a list of all the great things that you've done, no matter how big or small. I mean, it could be that you didn't hit your snooze button every day this week, and
Hmm.
that could be a great thing for you. But reading that list to yourself as if you're reading about somebody else with excitement and energy, and you are this amazing, incredible individual. And so that's who we need to focus on, not we didn't get this or we didn't get that at the mercy of somebody else's decision.
Hmm.
So I love your Control Alt Delete, because I can visualize that on my computer right here.
Yeah, and the idea that the greatness piece, I mean, I think that's so important because we do get stuck in that rut all the time, right? And if we were to read that list about our best friend, we'd be like, "Oh my gosh, you are doing so many things. You are amazing." But when we look at ourselves, we're like, "Oh, we're not getting anything done." Right? No, that's
That's
not
right.
true, right? So I
That's
love
right.
the idea of reading it like you were reading it about somebody else instead of reading about
Mhm.
yourself because we are so hard on ourselves.
Absolutely. And we always just brush things off.
Mm,
Oh, you said you published a book, and you're probably like, oh yeah, I just published another book. Yeah, it's fine. But it's an amazing thing to publish a book.
yeah.
So, and you've got another one coming out in February. So, just owning that, owning that.
I think you
So,
said something really perfectly there because this is another thing that I like to make, especially women, aware of is how we use the word just. Like, I just published
yes,
another work. Drop the just. You are not just
yes,
anything. You are not just anyone. You're amazing. And the idea that, oh, I'm just a teacher. I'm just a middle manager. I'm just a stay at home mom. Whatever it is, you're not just anything. Like own your impact, really claim it because it's so important. The work you do every day, how you take care of your kids, how you show up in the world, that's what changes the world. And not by
that's
calling
right.
yourself just. So drop the just.
Well, and the other word that I've heard quite a bit is try. I'll try to
Mm,
do that, or I'll try to do this. And so another friend of mine, she's actually in Sydney, Australia, and she said, you either do or you don't, and
mm.
you choose to do or you don't. There is no try. And of course, I have Yoda in the back of my mind as I say that. But she's like, just don't say try. Either you're going to or you don't, because whenever you say try, that gives you permission to fail or to not do it.
Yeah,
So drop the
that's
word try.
that's a really great one as well. I was on someone else's podcast recently and she said that she had a guest on and maybe it was the same person that was saying, don't use the word try. I
Uh-huh.
use it sometimes in that if you don't try, you'll never know, right? But if you don't do
Yes.
it, maybe it should be if you don't do it, you'll never know.
Right.
So,
Yep. Attempt it. That's right.
yes.
So, how would you personally define leadership impact? Leadership impact. And has your definition shifted with all of your experiences that you've had?
Oh, it's definitely shifted. I mean, I think that leadership impact used to be maybe the bottom line, the budget, the financial component to things. Are the people around me satisfied with my work instead of, okay, what kind of change am I impacting? What kind of change am
Mhm.
I creating? And what kind of change am I creating within myself? I think a lot of times we forget about us in the equation. We think about everybody else and we get left behind, especially as women.
Mhm.
We tend to do that. And so I think that the idea of the impact we're making, okay, sure, you can look at some financial stuff, but it really is about at the end of the day, when we look in the mirror, how do we feel? Like, have we made a difference in ourselves that we are able to move forward in a different way?
And I love that reflection piece. That again is something that most times people reflect when things have gone wrong.
Mm,
But I always encourage everyone to reflect when things have gone right and just evaluate, what were some decisions I made? What were the interactions that I made? Were there any new connections? What was the lesson that I learned today? And when you go back and reflect and journal and do all of those things, you are really developing kind of a huge toolkit, if you will, to kind of go back and say, what worked and what didn't if I'm ever in these situations again. But thinking about, am I making a change? Am I making a difference? I think that is so powerful in making sure that as leaders, and again, with or without a title, but as you're influencing others, as leaders, you're really working with an individual, a person, a human.
mhm.
It's not about jumping up that ladder and getting to the next position. And if you're one of those, then you're really that self-serving leader rather than the selfless leader. So I love that you said, am I connecting? Am I creating a difference? Am I, doing what I can for others to make things better around me? So
I think we take a
awesome.
lot of things for granted. So, it was a conversation I had with my husband a few years ago. He hated the idea of any kind of customer service call, right? If
Hmm.
anything needed to happen, he was like, you do it. And I said, okay, well, something you probably need to do, but I'll do
Yeah.
it. And it was that idea that you're not talking to customer service, you're talking to a person. We're
Yes.
gonna get on there and we're gonna be nasty and we're gonna be like, where is that gonna get you? It's a human on the other end of the line. Maybe these days there's some AI stuff,
Mhm.
but
Yeah.
you know,
I want to talk to a person.
yeah, give me a person, please. But and it's funny because so the next time something like that came about, I said, I need you to try it. I need you to do it.
Mhm.
Let's get rid of try. I need
Yeah,
you to
that's a
do
good.
it. You you call and ask the person how their day is going. Ask the person something personal because they're a person and see
Mhm.
how it goes from there. And he's like, "Oh my gosh, you won't believe it. It went really well." He goes, "I just
Mhm.
Simoned something." I was like, "Oh, I like that. You Simoned something." But
I'm gonna write that down. Simone something.
I think it's so important that we make those connections, those
Mhm.
interactions. I mean, that's such a big part of leadership, not just saying, oh, you need to do this, this, and this. Like the modeling part is huge, right? For
Mhm.
me, modeling matters more than managing. The idea of how you
Yes.
show up in the world, it's like me telling my kids, well, you have to do this as I'm sitting on the couch just like watching TV. You need to go read 6 books. Yeah, you think they're going to read 6 books while I'm sitting there watching TV?
Hmm.
What am I modeling there?
Right. It's the old do as I say, not as I do, but let's not
Yes.
do that.
No, because it doesn't
Let's
work,
not do that.
right?
No, and I love that you said, ask the human about their day or ask them something
Yeah.
personal, just to make that connection. And my husband, whenever, we're in town, we have to, grab a quick bite. You might go through a drive-through, whatever it is. He tries to be overly engaging. Hey, how was your day? Thanks so much. You're doing a great job. Whatever it might be, and it puts a smile on their face. And he's a big jokester, and he's got all these funny little jokes. And so they'll smile and he goes, see, I made a little bit of a difference in her day. I
Hmm.
bet she's going to be happier for the rest of the day. And I said, yes, you did, dear.
It's
So
so
he's,
true. It is true
yes.
because a lot of people will go through a line like that and just like grab their bag and not say two words. And this
Hmm.
person is standing there for 8 hours, right? And to
Yes.
have a little bit of interaction that someone actually cares that they're there, I think is
Hmm.
huge.
Well, and looking at their name tag, call them by
Mm,
name.
yeah,
That is huge. And they go,
yeah.
oh, they actually paid attention. In fact, my family and I were out at a Mexican restaurant and I called the waitress over to say a compliment to her. And she goes, you remembered my name.
Mm,
I said, I did. She goes, you're the first person since I've worked here that has actually called me by name.
wow.
Wow. I said, well, I hope I'm not the last. I said, I
And
hope you have a great day.
And you know what? She'll remember that. So that's the other
Hmm.
thing too, when you think about impact, that idea of
Yep.
like these small things that you can do that truly make an impact. But of course, we don't consider them leadership because it's not something you get paid for, right? But it's so
That's right.
important that we do these little things because that's how we go through, that's how we make the world a better place by actually caring about what's happening.
Well, it's how you treat each other.
Hmm.
Absolutely. And so, what would you say are one to two key habits or rituals that help you stay grounded and focused in what you do and changing the world?
So I would say, yeah, I'm changing the world. So first thing is positive affirmations. And if you would
Hmm.
have asked me 10 years ago, I would have said, no way, come on, that doesn't work. And
Way.
right, that doesn't work. That's woo woo. No, and there's so much science behind it now, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's how I start my day. Even if I wake up and I'm like, oh, this is going to be a really tough day, I don't talk to myself like that. Do you want to wake up in the morning and say, oh, today is just going to be so miserable, right? No, you don't
Hmm.
want to do that. But people do. So you have a
Hmm.
choice every morning to say, am I going to be miserable or am I going to be happy? And by using positive affirmations, it really puts me on the track to say, like, this is going to be a great day. I believe these things are going to happen. And then I'm so much more productive because my mindset is in a place that, yes, let's go.
Yes.
And the second thing that I think for me is really important is evening gratitudes. I could have
Yeah.
had the crappiest day, but there is still something that I'm grateful for. And
Yes.
I think a lot of times we forget to do that. We'll be like, "Oh, well, that day just sucked. Like I'm just going to bed." Well, no,
Right.
what there was something good that happened. There's at least one thing that happened that could kind of help you get out of your little rut here by saying, "Wow, I forgot about this. This was important." So that's why I think that reflection piece is so important because then we see like, oh wait, no, it's not awful. It's not all awful. It's good. We're okay.
Well, and that evening gratitude, it might not even be something from today that you
Mm,
finally learn your lesson, but I always talk about seeing the opportunity and the challenges. Even the pandemic in education, although it was horrible and a lot of things had to shut down, and I'm not talking about the health side of it, but just the businesses having to shut down. Education grew so much because of the technology that came about, and we can interact without being in a physical space with each other, and all the decisions that were made to support student learning and growth. So even though something might be bad, there's always, as you mentioned, a lesson or something good that comes out of it. We might not see it that same day, like the position that we did not get,
mm-hmm.
but usually down the road, we go, oh, there was a reason. This is the sequence that happened. These are the checkers that fell in order for me to be where I am now. So,
Yeah. I talk about that actually in my first book. One of my chapters is called "Everything Happens for a Reason?" question mark. But because I think a lot of times you don't realize it in the moment, right? People are like, I
right.
have no idea why that happened, or why didn't I get that job? I deserve that job. But then later on, you realize, wait, I am in such a better place now
Mhm.
that that's why this happened. And we have to remind ourselves of that. It's not easy, but we have to remind ourselves of that because you don't know what's coming next. And it could be something
Right.
way better than you ever imagined.
Well, and some of the greatest things come out of the struggle.
Mm.
It's not that everything is great along the way. I mean, think about Edison. He had, 200 and some odd times, was probably more than that, that he didn't make a light bulb. And somebody would say, "Oh, you failed 200 and some odd times." He's like, "No, I found 200 and some odd times how not to make a light bulb. And the
Mm-hmm.
next one succeeded." So it's learning and realizing that sometimes you have to go through the challenging parts in order to grow more. You have to get replanted.
Yeah,
So,
100%. So my daughter, well, one of my daughters, she's a second year law student, and
mhm,
she this summer she interned with a judge in criminal court and also at the hospital in their legal department. And
mhm,
so as she worked with the judge, she was like, "Ugh, is this a waste of my time? I don't like this at all." And I said, "Absolutely not. Showing you what you don't want to do is just as
mhm.
important as showing you what you want to do." And she's like, "Oh, that's a great attitude. Now I'm going to go in there happier because I'm feeling guilty that maybe I took someone else's position that, really
Yeah.
wanted to do this." And I was like, "Well, it's a great learning experience." And I think that when we approach that in everyday life, it really shows us, okay, yeah, this is why.
Absolutely. Same thing. My son was at a camp. It was an engineering camp, and they were exposed to like 10 different types of engineering. And he goes, "I know what I don't want to do." I said,
Mm,
"Perfect." It was
yep.
well worth it.
Yes.
So, what is one piece of advice you wish you had earlier in your leadership journey?
Mm.
One piece of advice you wish you had received earlier in your
Yeah.
leadership journey.
I think the biggest thing is that I didn't need a title. I was so focused on
Yeah.
accomplishing the next piece. Like with accounting, it was like, okay, I have to get the CPA license. I have to go for this. I have to do this. And instead of saying, let me look at myself differently. Let me change the way I
Mhm.
see myself and say, wow, look at all of the things I'm doing in leadership right now, instead of saying, I need that next shiny moment. I think so often we focus on that next shiny moment instead of like being grounded in what we're doing right now.
Love that you didn't need a title and being grounded in what you're doing right now. And, we have so many students that would come through my office that I would ask them what they wanted to major in. And they would give me something, whether it was business or science or what have you. They go, "Well, my mom said I should."
Mm,
And I said, "Okay, I'm proud that your mom is involved in your educational journey, but what do you want to do?" He's like, "Well, I don't know."
yeah.
I said, "Well, do you want to do this, that, or the other?" And they're like, "Well, not really." I said that we need to find something that you want to do. And that's what I think so many people are chasing the paycheck, or they're chasing, the positive things that they see about, having the job title, having the paycheck, having whatever it might be, keeping up with the Joneses, if you will, was the term that we used way back when.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, there is something about finding your purpose and being happy and enjoying what you do and being fulfilled. So, how would you have that conversation with that student if they came in and said, "Well, my mom wants me to do this"? How would you have that conversation? What would you say to somebody?
Yeah, it's funny because I would say that with my first couple of kids, I probably did say that. You should be
Yeah.
doing this. This is, and that's how I grew up. Like you're
Yep.
either a doctor,
Mm-hmm.
a teacher, an accountant, a lawyer. Like those were the things. I wanted to be an
Yep.
actress. My dad said, "Not while you're under my roof." I failed organic chemistry and then I got a D in it. So medical school was out of the question because that was my first thought. And so it's that idea that you're in this for the long haul. It's okay to
Mm-hmm.
change your mind, first of all. And
Mm-hmm.
your mom is not going to be the one doing the job later. So I know it's sometimes so hard. I even look at my son who just started college this year. Chemistry has not been his friend. And he called me after his last test and he was like crying and saying, "Oh my gosh, I'm disappointing you." And I said, "You're not disappointing me. This is your life. You have to decide what you want to do for yourself. Because
Mm-hmm.
again, you are in it for the long haul. If this isn't something you love, don't do it." Not that anybody loves, you know, first year chemistry because it's brutal.
Other than
But
my son, loves it.
yeah, I wish yeah. Not I wish, it doesn't matter. But my so for example, my daughter who is 25, she went to school at Brandeis. She graduated with a triple major in biology, psychology, and neuroscience. And out of the six kids, she was the one that was going to be a doctor, following my husband's footsteps. And during COVID, she called us and she said, I know I'm going to disappoint you, but I don't want to go into medicine. And we're like, why would you think you're disappointing us? I think that's one thing is a lot of times the kids think that like we're going to be so disappointed when something happens. I said, what do you want? Like, what do you want to do? I'm not going to be doing your job. So you have to decide what you're really passionate about. Guess what she's doing now? She's doing a master's in art conservation in Cardiff, Wales. So because she loves art and she's very like those tiny little details are the things that she really loves. So I think
Mhm.
that's such an important conversation to say, like, what really interests you instead of like, what does your mom think? And know that your mom is really not going to be that disappointed. I mean, I definitely was not. I was like, go make yourself happy.
Yeah. That's the that's the foundation of it all, is seeing your kids happy and
Mm.
doing what they're doing and, being able to have their own life. That's, I've got one that's going off to college next year. So I'll be having half of an empty nest. I still have another one at home, but
Oh,
still.
my last one goes off in the fall, so I'll be an empty nester after 30 years of kids in the home. So
Oh my
we
goodness.
we might celebrate a little bit, just a little.
Ah, so how do you reconnect with your purpose when leadership gets hard?
Mm. And leadership will get hard. But it's the reminder that those messy moments, that's all part of it. And understanding that you are making a difference, even when it seems like you're not. By showing up, by
Mhm.
standing there, then you are making a difference. I think a lot of times people think that there's got to be huge change in leadership. And a lot of times it's being that consistent voice, that person
Mm.
that's there instead of, oh, wow, we have to change all these things around. So it is going to be tough. I mean, that's part of what leadership is, whether you're in a boardroom or in a family, there's
Mhm.
messy moments and we have to embrace those and say, okay, what's coming next? Let me enjoy this moment right now, even the negative stuff, because you learn so much from that that you can pull forward with you.
Mm. And I love that you said consistent voice.
Mm.
I think that is so important in leadership because I've had supervisors, managers, whatever title they had, that were not consistent. I didn't know if I was going to walk into somebody who was happy or somebody that was fuming or somebody that was going to yell at me or somebody that was crying. So, being consistent, and it's not that you can't have any emotion, but it's being that person that is, I don't know how to say it other than being consistent, being open and honest and being able to have a conversation while holding your emotions right now, but navigating through it is essential. So, were there any leadership lessons that you learned the hard way? And how did it shape you? Leadership
Mm.
lessons you learned the hard way. And
Yeah,
it
I think
might be
there's
that
a
it was a negative experience that you had some growth from, but
yeah.
anything that stands out.
Really a big thing is right. It's okay to s- step down when things aren't going the way you thought they would. So, for example, there was a point in time as an entrepreneur, I was flipping houses, and that was when the market crashed, whatever year that was, the last market crash. And
2006.
yes,
Mm-hmm.
and we got stuck with two homes that couldn't do anything to. I was in a partnership with a friend of mine, and it just went south. And we actually had to give the homes back to the bank and lost all of our credit to the point where, I mean, my husband's a physician. We couldn't buy a car on credit because our credit, because he was co signing on the houses.
Mm-hmm.
So it was that moment where I said to myself, right, these things happen, mistakes
Mm-hmm.
happen. I'm not a failure. Okay, I messed up. How do I move forward? And let me tell you, we have like great credit today, right? So it's just in
Mm-hmm.
that moment, we can't just focus on that one negative moment. We have to say, okay, there's always light through the darkness and
Mm-hmm.
keep moving forward, even when we're like, oh my gosh, this is the worst thing ever. And so that taught me a lot about how I work as a leader instead of just dwelling on that, well, we're done. This is what am I going to do? There's nothing that's going to happen there. Okay, what did I learn from it and how can I move forward?
That's right. And whenever you have those moments, again, it was a situation. You have to
Mm,
realize that it wasn't you. It was, the economy. And you didn't have control over the economy, but you were kind of an outcome of what was going on. And I love that you said don't dwell and you kind of reflect and see what the good things are. but that's also the time that you can probably find out what your strengths are.
Mm.
What were you good at? What did you have challenges with? And maybe that's where you found what your passion or your purpose was through, a negative experience that can take you in a different direction. So, how do you prioritize decision making when you're pulled in multiple directions? I mean, you're a
Oh,
podcast host, you're an author. I know that you've done some TED Talks. I know that you're a keynote speaker. So, how do you prioritize your decision making?
yeah, it really is about priorities. People talk about balance. I do not believe in balance. Balance does not work for me. The idea of that,
Balance is like this.
yes. So,
Yeah.
and that's why I talk about it in terms of priorities, because there are days that there are certain things that have to get done. For example, I'm giving a
Hmm.
speech on Friday. Like I have to turn in the presentation, right? I also have to turn in the stuff for my testimonials for my book are due today. So I'm like hounding a couple people saying, "Do you have it ready? If not, I have to just submit it." But we have to understand that there are priorities, and there's days that are going to be really heavily weighted on work, and there are days that are going to be heavily weighted on something that's happening in our family, and we have to be good with that. And
Hmm.
the idea that you have to do everything all at once is not possible, right? You make your
Right.
to-do list, and whatever you don't finish, that's for tomorrow. My life hack is I do it on a piece of paper, pink piece of paper, so I don't lose it. Because if a white piece of paper in our house, like forget it, there's 5 million of those. But a pink piece
That
of paper,
so
I'm like, oh,
simple.
that's mine. That's my list. Nobody else uses pink paper in my house, so like, oh, I gotta come back to that. But really, it is about deciding, okay, what do I need today, right? If one of the kids are sick, then I've got to focus on that. If I have a big presentation due, I have to focus on that. And I think my kids have learned that really well from me, and that you can't do everything for everybody all at the same time. It just isn't possible. You have to
Mm.
make sure, as you prioritize things, that self-care is part of that prioritization. Because if we're constantly doing for everybody else and not taking time for ourselves, whatever your self care regimen looks like, and if you don't have one, we can help you find one. But it's
Mm.
so important that we take that time to say, okay, this is what I need to fill my cup.
Well, and that is so. I love one that you have pink paper. I mean,
Yeah.
that is, I'd probably have blue or green or
Yeah.
purple or something, but I'm a list maker as well. But what I sometimes do is if I look at my list, I didn't get anything done, I reflect on what did I do, and I actually add it to the list so that I can
Mm.
feel
I
accomplished
do that too. And then
or
I cross it
something.
out. I
That's
write it
right.
down. I'm like, oh,
And
cross it
so
out. Yeah.
yep. So I got something done. It was a to-do list and now it's a to-done list.
Yeah.
But that self-care is such an important piece. And in leadership, most individuals, they forget about themselves because
Mm-hmm.
they're serving everybody else, especially those selfless leaders. And so I call it synthesis, is that, you don't have to compartmentalize your work and then go home and have your self-care. If you model self-care, just as you mentioned earlier, is modeling something so somebody else can see. If you are in a leadership type position, or if you are the leader in an area and you're modeling self-care, stepping away and doing a yoga pose in your office, or, taking a walk up and down the stairs, or having a walking meeting, whatever it might be, then it can become integrated into your life and your world, and it becomes the norm. It's not abnormal for you to take time for yourself. So I always encourage individuals that I work with to model that for those that are surrounding them.
Yeah, I mean, the modeling piece is huge across the board for whatever we're doing. I mean, do you want
Hmm.
people to, when you're going through your day and you're maybe miserable about something, do you want the other people to copy that and be miserable? And you're like, oh,
That's
wait, is
right.
that what I really showed them? No, you don't want to
Hmm.
do that, right? You want to put yourself out there so that people are like, oh, I feel comfortable with this person. I'm not scared of this
Yes.
person. I really like working with this person.
Yes, absolutely. So what does leading authentically mean to you? And how do you practice that daily?
Mm.
Leading authentically.
Yeah, so it really is about showing up as exactly who you are. So I think for so long, I put up a facade. I pretended to be this really strong person because everybody thought that I had it all together, right? I mean, she must have it together. She has 6 children and she's doing all these things. And inside, I was like, I'm really struggling. And I think we're so afraid to talk about like when something goes wrong or something that we're struggling with. And for me, leading authentically is going to be like being able to say, you know what, I don't know the answer to that, but I'll find out for you, instead of saying,
Yes.
making it up and saying, oh, yeah, this is how you have to do it. Okay, well, that's not real. So it's really coming forward, just like owning it, saying, yeah, I don't know the answer to that, but I'll figure it out, or I'll help you figure it out. Or, you know what, I'm having a really crappy day and I need a minute. But most people don't do that. They just, and their emotions will show, but they don't say what they're struggling with. And what I've realized over time, it's so important to say, like, hey, I could use some help with this. Not putting it on someone
Mhm.
else's plate, but just to say, hey, here's what I'm struggling with. I could use some help.
Well, and there's two comments that I have with that. One is that when somebody would come in, and I was the dean at the time, and so they would expect me to have the answers. They would expect
Mm,
that. And so I would tell them quickly, that I don't have all the answers. So let's brainstorm. What are some thoughts that you have? Maybe some thoughts that I have. They come together. Do we need to bring anybody else into this conversation? But realizing that I was encouraging other individuals whenever they came to me with a problem is that they had a possible solution,
mm,
or they had at least thought about it, and not just to drop it in my lap and expect me to fix everything. So that is one thing that I always wanted to do in my leadership space, because that would also help them start to think about problems differently and not really see them all as problems, going, oh, well, this is a chance that we have to change something for the better or to shift something and make it better. But I also had another colleague that I had, she was actually my very first guest on my very first podcast that I had. But her leadership advice was to wear your own shoes. She
mm,
said there are so many times that as we come into leadership roles that we're trying to emulate or copy what somebody else does. Whether it's the John Gordons or the John Maxwells or whoever it might be, or Mel Robb, whatever it might be. But they all have their own way of doing things. You might take a piece here and there, but you couldn't fit into their shoes.
hmm.
So why not wear your own shoes and become that authentic leader that has your parts and pieces that make you you?
Yeah, I love that. I always say to my kids that you can never walk a day in someone else's shoes. I mean, there's that saying, if you walk a day in someone else's shoes, you never can. You're never going to be in that same
Yeah,
moment, that same situation. And it's so important that we remind ourselves that that is impossible. Like, exactly. Wear your own shoes, be you.
that's right. So how do you create momentum when you're feeling stuck or uncertain, or what would you make a recommendation to others who are feeling stuck and uncertain? Maybe they're lacking that confidence.
I do it anyways. So even when I feel like, oh my gosh, I'm stuck, I'm like, okay, no, you got to go out there and do something. You have to take action. As soon as you stop taking action, that's where you really get stuck. So whatever it is, if you're feeling really down because you didn't get the job you really wanted, okay, apply it to
Mhm.
something else. Keep going and keep putting yourself forward, because as soon as you stop the momentum, then you really feel bad. But I think that that idea of no matter what is happening, do it scared. Do the things you think you can't. I mean, that's such a huge
Mhm.
thing for me, is that, and that's, I say it all the time, do the things you think you can't, because that's when change really happens.
You can't yet,
You can't
right?
yet. Yeah. You think you can't yet.
That's
Yes.
right.
Yes.
So how do you navigate and overcome imposter syndrome or moments of self-doubt?
Mm. It's really, it goes back to, so the voice inside my head, the what if whisperer,
Mhm.
I call her Sally, likes to have conversations with me telling me that, wait, no, you didn't deserve this. You didn't earn this on your own. You don't, yeah. And it's not true, right? It's the stories that we tell ourselves. And it's that awareness piece where we need to say, this isn't real. This is something that we're telling ourselves. And everybody does it, right? Knowing that you're not alone in this, because everybody struggles. There's not one person in this world that doesn't struggle with something. I think that we like to play that comparison game and look at everyone else out there and say, wow, they have the perfect life and they have the perfect this. Well, there's no such thing as perfection. And as soon as you have a conversation with someone, you'll see that they too struggle. And so it's that understanding of that, telling yourself a better story, because you are the one in charge of telling yourself that story.
I love that you personify the
Mm.
what if,
Yes.
the what if whisper, Sally.
Yeah.
And that might be, a trick to share all over, because if it's personified, then you can say, no, stop talking to me, Sally. I
Hmm.
don't want to hear that. I'm better than that. So, let's shift it. But you did also say that, you always see the good things or the great things that people do, just like Facebook. People put their A side of the record, and I know I'm dating myself now,
Mm.
but old records on the A
Yes.
side, that was the popular song. The B
Yes.
side was a song that nobody heard or cared about. So everybody puts their A side on social media and out to for the world to see, but they don't always show the B side where they're struggling. And so it's just remembering that what we see isn't the whole story.
Mm,
There's so much more that is underneath that we don't know about. We don't, eh, whenever we would work with students and they had a challenging day in a classroom, most of the teachers thought it was against them, that they were mad at the teacher for something that happened in class. And when the individual got to my office and we had a conversation, it was because their mother was just diagnosed with cancer. Their dad had left. They were now the breadwinner in the class and were going to be late for their job if they didn't get out of class 5 minutes early.
mm,
And
yeah,
so it's, what is the rest of the story? You only see the tip of the iceberg. You don't see the rest of it that's under the water.
it's so
And
true.
so, yes. And so having that awareness is huge. So, what advice would you give to leaders navigating burnout or overwhelm?
Mm. So obviously burnout is a huge problem. So one of the things I created, it's called the REAL method. And what it stands for is respect yourself, embrace your failures, ask yourself what you want, and live without limits. And that's really about building confidence. A lot of times when you feel confident, then you realize that, okay, I don't have to say yes to everything, right? That idea of being everything to everyone. And the reason I bring this up when we're talking about the burnout piece is a lot of times what we struggle with is the idea of self respect. So, as a kid, I was taught to respect my elders, my peers. Never once do I remember being taught that the most important person to respect is myself. We talk about
Mm.
demanding respect from other people, but it's really about demonstrating it. So, if we respect ourselves by setting boundaries, by saying no to things that we don't need to be doing, then it really leaves room for other things to happen. And it doesn't lead to as much burnout because we're like, okay, I'm doing the things that I need to be doing and that I want to be doing instead of what everybody else tells me I have to be doing.
Well, and always reminding yourself that no is a complete sentence.
Yes. Yes, it is.
So you don't have to do it. And I've, that was almost an epiphany as you were saying that, because yes, you are taught to respect everybody else, but I was not taught about my own self-care,
Hmm.
and taking care of myself as a child. In fact, that's one of the things that I talk about in one of my speeches is that my mother was everything to everyone, but she didn't take care of herself.
Hmm.
And I have a background in sports medicine, and so I should know better, but I followed what she did and I was taking care of everybody else. So I had to learn self-care much later. In fact, I'm still learning it, but it is a piece that if you don't care of yourself, who is it, Jane Pence, that said, if you don't take care of your body, where are you going to live?
Mm. Yeah,
you
I
know
love that.
you only
I
have
love
one
that.
body.
Yeah.
So, what routines or rhythms help you show up consistently for the people that are all around you? I mean, you've got a family of six, you've got your
Hmm.
husband, and you have your dogs, and your business, and the audiences that you speak to. And so, how do you use your rhythms or routines to help you show up consistently?
Yeah. Step one, give yourself grace, right? I mean, we have this idea that we have to
Yes.
start everything at a certain time. I had lunch with a friend of mine that I hadn't seen in years, and she is a teacher. She gets up every morning at 4 and she walks every morning. When I was younger, I used to go walk with her a few mornings a week. I would drive over to her house and walk. And I'm like, you know what, this isn't my rhythm anymore. This isn't, this is too much for me to commit to things. I think a lot of times we
Mhm.
do that over committing when we're like, oh, I feel like I have to do that. So much of my day is very scheduled. If it's not in my calendar, it doesn't happen. We were talking about this podcast episode.
Mhm.
It was in my
Mhm.
calendar, therefore it happened. So, but I do schedule pretty much everything. I schedule and I make sure like I schedule time for self-care on my calendar. I schedule
Mhm.
time for like we have date night, right? Even though we only have one kid left at home, we still have date night because we both work a ton. And it's really
Mhm.
about being intentional. And a lot of times I think we forget that piece of that, oh yeah, no, we're good. We've been married for 32 years. It's fine. It's all, nothing bad's ever going to happen. Well, you have to be intentional and say like, yeah, let's go out and I'm making a really special dinner tonight, or let's go out and watch a movie together. Something that
Yep.
is part of a different way of doing things, because otherwise we are like, oh, yeah, you just take everything for granted.
Mhm. Well, and it's so funny, you've been married 32 years. My husband and I are coming up on, I think, 28 years. And, it's right. It's being intentional. And sometimes I get into that rhythm and I have to stop and go, oh, no, no, no. I need
Mm.
to focus on him a little bit. I've been taking care of my kids. I've been taking care of my dad, moved in with us. So I need to stop and, push everything aside and take care of him because a lot of marriages, even in the 20s and 30s
Yes.
years, end. And that's not something that I want to do. So it's making sure that you're intentional in everything that you do.
Yeah. I saw something the other day and I don't remember the exact terminology. It was like the grade divorce, but it's not exactly that. But I was like,
Yeah.
oh, it's like so many people are waiting for their kids to move out of the house and then they get
Yes.
to that point and they're like, wait, we have nothing in common anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And so it really is taking the time to say, okay, let's do things together while the kids are still home so
Yep.
that we really know each other. So when they leave, we're like, oh, we have something to talk about still. And it's not the
That's
kids.
right.
Yay, it's not the kids.
That's right. That's right. So, how do you stay motivated when you're just getting started and things feel uncertain? So, what advice would you have for somebody if they're just getting started in whatever it is, but they're feeling unmotivated and they're uncertain? They don't know if it's the right journey or right path.
Yeah, I think everything takes patience. And
Mm,
that is such an important piece. I thought I knew what it was like to be patient as when I had three kids. And then when we adopted Noah, I learned a whole new level of patience. And it's not like you're just going to stop one day and say, oh, no, I'm not going to do this anymore, right? It is
hmm.
saying that even when it's challenging, you keep going because you don't know what's going to happen next. It could be like some amazing breakthrough.
That's right.
So having the patience to say, oh, wait, I can keep doing this and let's see what comes of it instead of, oh, I'm throwing in the towel.
I love that. Patience. Patience is a virtue.
Yes.
So, what is next in your journey? And how can our listeners follow and support your work? Because I can't believe we're only a few minutes away from ending, and
Yeah, that
we
went
just
really
had this great
fast.
conversation. I
Yeah.
know it did. So I want to make sure that I give you. Yeah, we've got 5 minutes to close, so I want to make sure that I give you some space to share what's next for you and your journey.
So keynote speaking. I mean, I love speaking. I'm creating a new group coaching. And my biggest thing that's happening is my book that comes out on February 17th, which again is Real Confidence, a simple guide to go from unsure to unshakable. And it's based on my real method that I mentioned before. And really, as a book for women to go out there and say, I can do this. I
Mm.
struggled for so long with self doubt. And I didn't think that I pretended. I pretended. I didn't live my life in a way that I really wanted to because I thought I was doing what I had to do instead of saying, "Oh, wow, this isn't really living. This is performing." And so that book is really all about helping you realize that you're capable of anything you want to do and that you are more than enough.
Love that. I love that. Make sure you're living and not just performing. That
Yeah.
is just an incredible statement right there. So, any words of wisdom or encouragement that you'd like to share with aspiring women leaders who are tuning in?
Yeah. And I forgot the second half of the question where you asked, where can they find you? So let me go back to
Yeah,
that first.
yeah, please do.
So my website is SimoneKnego.com, SimoneKnego. My new book is the website for that is realconfidencebook.com. And then I'm on social media. So I'm the only Simone Knego in the world. So you can find me wherever you look, even if you spell it wrong. So I would say my biggest piece of advice is that you don't need to change who you are. You need to change the way you see yourself. And
Mm.
we're constantly thinking about, oh, if we do this, this, and this, how about we look in the mirror and say, wow, you are amazing. You're capable as you are, instead of saying, oh, well, if you only did this differently, then it would be okay.
Oh my goodness, so powerful. You don't need to change who you are, change the way you see yourself. So, thank you so much, Simone, for being on this episode with me. I can't wait to get this one out there and have people hear it. You're just such an inspiration, and I love everything that you're doing, especially with women in confidence. So, thank you so much for joining us for another episode of Exponentially Elevate Your Leadership Impact. I hope today's conversation left you feeling inspired, empowered, and ready to take the next step on your leadership journey. A huge thank you to our incredible guest for sharing her wisdom, experience, and authenticity. If you loved what you heard, be sure to connect, follow, and continue the conversation. We are building a leadership movement, and your voice matters. If today's episode resonated with you, I invite you to grab a copy of my book, To Exponentially Elevate Your Leadership Impact, a year-long journey, which is a weekly guide to confident, authentic, and purpose-driven leadership. It's available on Amazon and through my website. If you're ready to go even deeper, whether it's booking me to speak at your next event or diving into a leadership program or simply connecting, head to drstephanieduguid.com. I'd love to hear from you. Let me leave you with this powerful reminder. Legacy is not what we leave for people, it's what we leave in people, by Peter Stropel. So until next time, keep leading with heart, stay courageous, and always do good. Have a great day.
All right, excellent. Good show.